Now, I know you don't, but do you have an extra one of these things, the pieces? You don't, right?
I know where the gank one from. I don't even have my headphones right now.
Yeah, if you can gank one right quick, that'll help. Okay. But we only got 2 minutes before you have to.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Get that back from you.
Yeah, I'll give it right back to you. It's like, because I went to New York, I forgot to put it on.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I use these headphones for my. Okay, I'm ready when you are. Here we are. They still playing hip hop here?
They mixed it up now.
Oh, okay.
80s, 90s.
Oh, so they changed the format a lot.
It was too hardcore before.
Oh yeah, it was. It was like
It was all current hardcore.
Yeah.
Clean version. It was slipping in some cuss words.
Yeah.
FCC fines will kill you.
Oh really?
Yeah, thousands and thousands.
Oh wow.
They don't play. Ain't no little 200s. They hit them 1,000.
Oh, they make it so that you don't do it again. I heard Howard Stern talking about that. I'm ready to roll.
For years. Right. The song is a little over a minute. I'll get out of this and then get right into the show. No, this is more feel-good music.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the hits.
So we call it, throwback.
Okay. I'm telling you though, I played you that Kathy Hughes thing for a reason. Like I think.
Well, that's very inspirational.
Once we get,
it's the journey that we're on right now.
I think one of the things that can bring back a big black audience is a Quiet Storm, man. Quiet Storms always work. I remember even when I was in Missouri, my mother was in law school. They had a strong Quiet Storm, even out there in the Midwest, man. And they got every black person in the city.
We had somebody that wanted to do a Quiet Storm, but dealing with the Spanish, they were like,
I'm sure we can find somebody that can do that. That's not too hard to do. There's a lot of people that love that.
Yeah. In fact, there's a lot of folks that they're actually doing college radio now. They love the movie.
Yeah, man. I'm like, for whenever you're ready to start the marketing to get the black people back strong, even after you put the signal back up, I think that's one of the quickest ways we can do it.
Yeah, we'll definitely make it happen. We just gotta get through this financing.
Yeah, I understand. And I would actually be wanting to talk more about that today. I'm just so tired, so I'm gonna call you like later on tonight, tomorrow, probably tomorrow after church or something like that. After church. I know my aunt's a pastor, and I know Saturday nights are really like she's off limits because she's got to come up with a sermon for the next day.
Yeah,
and that's big. And coming up with a sermon is hard, man. It takes a lot of focus, and she's got to sit in a dark room. And
actually, I have to do it at my job because
All right, let's roll.
Boys to Men on the Power Morning Show with Motown Philly. It's a sensational Saturday on the Power Morning Show, weekend edition. I'm your host, DJ Mackie C. 17 minutes after the hour of 10 in the greater Windsor, Hartford area. The Jamal Show is up next momentarily right here on the Power. We're going to pause for the cause and give to you today's Power Weather Forecast for this sensational Saturday. And the Power Weather Forecast is being brought to you by our friends at the Royal House Chapel International Victory Center. Today's Power Weather Forecast, partly sunny skies today with a high of 50 degrees. Tonight, partly cloudy skies with a 20% chance of rain, a low tonight of 38 degrees. Currently outside our Power Studios, it is sunny and 40 degrees. Today's Power Weather Forecast has been brought to you by the Royal House Chapel International Victory Center of South Windsor as they present to our area the annual Ladder Glory Conference 2019, November 6th through the 10th in South Windsor, Connecticut. For more information, please call the church office at area code 860-436-2229. That's 860-436-2229. Up next, it's the Jamal Show right here on the Power.
This is the Jamal Show.
It's always a bring me up. I'm glad I chose that beat. The guy that made this is actually, he passed away after he did something to me, so it's special.
This is the Jamal Show.
All right. Bring me in. I got to tell you folks, I woke up yet another day in my right mind, and I'm just fine with that. Good morning, my friends, ladies and gents. If it's Saturday morning, it's the Jamal Show live coming to you from WKND Studios at East Hartford, Connecticut. This is the place to get intelligent. Today, we will be getting you more intelligent about the disenfranchisement of voting rights from felons and some other topics. We'd like you to stay with us. It's going to be a good show, I promise you. As for me, I'm just getting back from New York City. Early this morning, I made an appearance at the Todd Bless birthday party in the Bronx, New York, just last night. So I'm here on very little sleep. I hope you have a Todd Bless record to play today. Do you have some downloads? That's good for his birthday. I'm here. Good morning to the bishop who is live in the studio with me at WKND. And for the record, he is not a felon. At least I don't think so. Once again, he nodded his head no. Once again, the Jamal Show is the place to get intelligent. I am Jamal C. Wright, your host from Harlem. Thanks for being with us. Keep in mind that my views do not represent those of the station. So keep that in mind when you're filing your lawsuit against us for being offended at the things I say. Please like the Jamal Show on Facebook, and you can email us at jamalshowradio@gmail.com. You can also use that email address to partner with us or advertise any projects that you may have. We could use your support, and you may not know this yet, but you could use ours if you didn't know that. Don't forget that I am an attorney, and if you need my help, contact me at the address jamalshowradio@gmail.com. It is my God-given duty to inform you guys that each and every episode of this show can be found on your favorite podcasting network. That could be iHeartRadio or Google Podcasts or wherever. We do not discriminate like Donald Trump does. We believe in diversity when it comes to podcasting networks. Just look for the Jamal Show. And there are some really good ones out there too. They are. Last week we had a great show about surviving your next police encounter. You want to hear that? A few weeks ago we had a great show about suicide. And let me tell you folks, the show lived. That show lives on as a podcast. You can check it out. Your support is greatly appreciated. We're going to have a Patreon page soon. As usual, we have a lot to talk about on this show. It's going to be a little bit shorter, though. We started a little late. Sorry for that. Each and every week, I scheme and plan on how to get you all more intelligent. I am an information addict, and I try to pass the fruits of my addiction on to you power listeners here at WKND. That's what the show is about every week. So get ready for some information, okay? Now, this show began as a political talk show. I'm a political fanatic. I watch politics a lot, and I love the art of politics. I believe that the need for a good political system is important. I believe in cooperation between parties to form a good government. And so again, this show began back in February 2019, with me talking primarily about politics. In fact, this show was inspired by stand-up comedian Donald Trump. I figured that if he can be president and not feel intimidated, regardless of how unfit he is, what's stopping me from making a contribution in a field that I actually love? So I started this show talking about politics, and that obviously led me to talk about Trump a lot. My experience has been that people generally don't like him. They tire of him, especially in the state of Connecticut. So I've learned to be more flexible with the topics discussed here over time. But today, there are just a few things I need to say about our politics today. They need to be said. Some important things, some things that have us looking forward. And here is where we will start. I'm going to be very, very frank. I'm told that the live version of this show has a primarily Black audience. And so I'd like to speak to you, my fellow Black people. And I'll say this. We failed the country. Let me clarify. We failed the country. I'm telling you the truth. The 2016 election featured the lowest Black turnout in the last 20 years. And that's really why stand-up comedian Donald Trump is president right now. He should have never won Pennsylvania. That should be egg on our face. We should be embarrassed about that. There are 6 million Black people residing in Philadelphia alone. They actually call it the city of brotherly love. There are 6 million Black people residing in Philadelphia alone. He won Pennsylvania because Black people didn't turn out. Well, actually, let me go back. That's only partially true. White women also voted for Trump, regardless of the 20 women who accused him of sexual assault. They forgot about that. But I'm not a white woman, so I'm not going to tell white women that they failed us, even though they didn't help. Black people definitely failed us by thinking that this election in 2016 was something that wasn't important enough to turn out for. And as you can see now, that was very unfortunate. That point of view was very unfortunate. My point in bringing this up is that this cannot happen again. If there's anything that we've learned in the past 3 years of this administration, is that politics does affect you. You may go on your daily routine thinking, who's that politician speaking on TV? Who cares? That has nothing to do with my life or my family or putting food on the table every day. But I'm here to tell you, I'm Jamal, I'm here to tell you that that's just a lie you tell yourself. It does affect you. Every administration's policies affect you and your family. Let me give you an example. I often think of the federal workers. I think of the federal workers a lot. You know, over 500,000 of them, I think, in the country. Most of them are actually minority. I think it's like 60% of the federal workers are minority. A lot of them live in D.C. D.C. is almost all Black. Under Trump, we've had the longest government shutdown in history. Back in January, we had one for about 35 days. We may, in fact, be headed for another one. So, smorgasbord of hell for you. And soon we may be headed for another one. When we have government shutdowns, federal workers stop working and earning money. They get furloughed. So when the government shut down for 35 days back in January, some federal workers didn't get paid for over a month. And they didn't get back pay either. Some people just lost out. And this was over the Christmas holiday. When that happened back in January, I wondered how many federal workers didn't vote because they figured politics has nothing to do with their life. Trump lost by like 70,000 votes in 3 states. There's more than that in federal workers in the country. So I wondered how many federal workers didn't vote because they figured politics didn't put food on their table, or at least as much, they didn't think it has as much to do with their life as last night's basketball game or football game. I bet a lot of those federal workers didn't vote in the 2016 election. And what would have happened if they had? Well, they probably wouldn't have been furloughed from work, right? Trump caused that shutdown and got nothing for it, if you remember. He caused it because he wanted funds to build a wall. He actually got less money after the shutdown than he got before the shutdown. So it was a total waste of time. But people didn't get paid. A whole lot of people didn't get paid. And I wonder about how many of those people didn't vote. This is our fault. Nobody can take the presidency in America without you giving it to them. And you either give it to them actively or passively. We gave it to them passively. And that's why I'm here to tell you this. I'm watching what's going on in the administration. I've been trying to keep my mouth shut so I wouldn't bore you people. Have you thinking, let me turn the channel because, Jamal's back on politics again. But politics affects your life, man. So the moral of the story is this. Here's the moral of the story. The outcome of the next election will affect your life, especially if stand-up comedian Trump is given another term. If that happens, it will really affect your life because your government will become more corrupt than you ever imagined possible. Another great example, George W. Bush. I went to see Fahrenheit, I think it was 9/11. I don't even remember. It was such a long time. It was like 20 years ago, right? Michael Moore's movie about Bush. I went to see that. I went to see it 6 times in the movie theater in college. And I thought Bush was the worst president that I could ever imagine. Lo and behold, you learn new things as you get older and wiser, right? You think you've seen it all. Compared to what we're going through now, I mean, Bush can be closer compared to Barack Obama, actually. One thing I'll never forget about him, by the way, he hired more black people on his cabinet than any president in history, including Obama. So give Bush some credit on that. He also saved Africa from an HIV crisis, and they still love him to this day there for that. But I digress. People. Once again, the moral of the story is the outcome of the next election will affect your life. The bottom line, my friends, is that if you don't vote, most people will. Your adversaries will vote, and they love it when you don't vote. That's my first point I need to make to you. Black people, please do not fail our country again. She needs your participation. This democracy does not work without your participation. It cannot work without your participation. If you don't care, nobody else will. Nobody else should. If you don't care, then that same attitude reflects in your representation in your city, state, and definitely in Washington. What does caring mean? Caring means staying informed about what's going on. It takes more than just voting. It's going to take your encouragement for your friends to vote. It's going to take you taking your friends with you to the voting booth. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take you to actually care about something other than who won the championship. Now, it's my belief that privilege breeds weakness. Privilege breeds weakness. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that philosophy in this discussion. And you're welcome to read between the lines on that statement from a racial perspective all you want. I'm not afraid of that. But my purpose in bringing this up is because Americans, in relation to the world, are very, very privileged. The idea that you can live in a stable country and not have to worry about voting is a privilege that Americans have clearly taken advantage of and clearly taken for granted. Actually, that's what I really meant to say. They've really taken it for granted for a long, long time. Not since the actual Civil War, or maybe the Great Depression to a certain extent, have we had to ever really worry about the survival of the United States as a democratic experiment. But we must be mindful that nothing lasts forever. Even Rome fell. If we wish to keep our privileged position in the world, we must not take it for granted. We must not give what we have away to our adversaries, at least not so easily, and not due to ignorance. Now, I want to move on a little bit, since I'm on politics a little bit, and say something about the Electoral College. You know, everyone thinks about the Electoral College, especially Democrats now. Twice, I believe, in the past 20 years, you know, they've seen losses at a time when their Democratic candidate won the popular vote. So a lot of people feel that their vote doesn't count because of the skewed filter of the Electoral College. But let me explain a bit. We don't vote in a federal election, really. We don't vote in a federal election. We have no real federal election. Our national voting system is really set up like 50 different countries voting for a president, as opposed to one country of 320 million people voting for a president. The way we vote is set up so that presidents must win states, not popular votes. But this sets up an environment where there appears to be inequities. For example, North Dakota gets the same amount of senators as New York, even though there are more people residing in the Upper East Side of Manhattan than in the entire state of North Dakota. These inequities were meant to make it so that smaller population states wouldn't be ignored. The funny thing is that they're the only ones that politicians go to these days. No one goes to New York anymore. No one goes to California, really, except to raise money from Hollywood. But these inequities result in a situation where less populated states have a weighted vote. This explains why Hillary Clinton could win by 3 million votes and still lose the election. Because we count votes by state, not by people, in presidential elections. Now, this is a depressing situation. It rubs people the wrong way. It can give the 3 million extra people who voted for Hillary over Trump, it can make them feel like their vote didn't matter. It gives people the general expression that their votes don't matter. And what's worse is that the Electoral College is actually written into the Constitution. So it's just about impossible to modify without an actual constitutional convention. Somewhat like the one that we had in 1776. Do you remember that? I don't know. But let me come back to my original point here. If people get involved, options remain. Options disappear when people don't care. One of the best ideas I've ever heard regarding the Electoral College recently, I read a piece by a man who said we should give Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. statehood. Statehood for both has been talked about for a long time. Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. Both areas of America are taxed, and neither have a vote in Congress. So that's taxation without representation. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But it just so happens that both areas are filled with minorities. What a coincidence. And both areas have shown an increased interest in being states. Puerto Rico, I believe, voted for statehood just a couple of years ago. And D.C. as well, the mayor of D.C. recently, and as recently as, within the last couple of years, has been voicing her desire to bring statehood to D.C. As I said, I read a piece recently that said that if the next Democratic president was to make those regions into actual states with representation in Congress, it would even out the conservative advantage in the Electoral College that we have today. So we wouldn't have to change anything except by making those two states. It would even things out. And we could accomplish this without a constitutional convention like the one we had in 1776 or ratification from the states. But we can't do any of this without people caring and voicing their opinion through their vote. The democracy relies on your vote. Without it, we have no democracy. And if you lose that, it won't be so easy to get back. And if you vote and Trump wins anyway, then America deserves what it's got coming to it, right? But that's better than him winning because you stayed home because you ain't got no time for it. Because you got to go and put eggs and bacon on the whatever, and you don't have no time for that. I bet you'll have time for it when you see every year in every budget the Republicans put forward, they're trying to cut food stamps for needy kids in America. Every year they do that. Is that what you want to see happen? That's what's going to happen if you don't stand in their way. If you don't care, people will eat less. All the stuff you see on TV and in newspapers happening these days, the administration in chaos, has more turnover than the McDonald's on 103rd Street and 3rd Avenue in Spanish Harlem. We cannot afford to let this happen again. Let's get ready to take a break. Can we let's give the birthday boy some flair. Let's just Stand By Me. Do we have that? Let's throw that on right quick for my man Ty Bless. Happy birthday, Ty.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh. the sky.
So use these. Very handy. I use those every day. Next thing, ready? Okay. Take what? Oh, I'm trying to. I don't want to keep giving them play when I'm gonna need to go back to them for money. You know, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna do that. I'm still figuring out the way it goes, like the way that the show earns. I'm still trying to tweak that, but keep them for now. I'll probably play them next week, but I'm gonna go back to them and see if I can get some more, support. That's why I didn't play them again yet. I didn't know if they were current. Yeah. I'm gonna have to change them. I'll have to go over that, because I'm gonna start doing sponsorships and stuff like that. So, this is so much to handle, right? I need a team. I'm gonna have to get some.
Current sponsorship is the law office of the Attorney General.
That's right. I gotta keep that in mind. Thanks for reminding me. All right. Let me get myself ready here. Jason was calling you.
Yeah, I was trying. It's hard to catch it.
Okay.
I may have to step out and return it while you're on the air.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had to silence. Yeah, I had to silence mine. After this, I'm gonna do taking my money after the next break.
Okay. Yeah, I had it lined up.
I'm keeping my eye on the time for the break of the hour. Okay, but I had less today. I had less material today anyway, so it's all good. It worked out. Hey there, how y'all doing? I want to ask y'all a question, and it kind of relates back to what I was talking about before about caring and people participating. This is about participation, but it's about participation maybe not of you this time, but it's about the felon next door. I often talk about how harsh the American criminal justice system is. Today I wish to start off talking about the rights of incarcerated people and felons, particularly voting rights. And I'm prepared to take an unpopular stance on this issue. I know already that most of you out there giving me the honor of your attention will not agree with my conclusion on the issue of rights for felons and the incarcerated. I know this. How do I know this? Because there was a poll released recently that tells us that a significant majority of Americans are opposed to the idea of prisoners being able to vote in national elections. In fact, around 69% of registered voters say that incarcerated felons should not be allowed to retain their voting rights. 31% favored the idea, but that's a minority. I'm going to make my case anyway, because this is the place where complex issues are discussed. This is a complex issue. And as such, I cannot really avoid it in good faith. And I'm going to urge my listeners to keep an open mind here. Now, I know that nobody likes incarcerated people, not even incarcerated people like themselves incarcerated, except their own families and sometimes not even them. Incarcerated people have no advocate. I often say there's nothing worse than being in a capitalistic country with no one to advocate for you. Those who have no advocate shrivel up and die. That's just how it is. Now, I can tell you some personal stories of how I know they have no advocate, but this is not that kind of a show right now. When I was a child, I'm going to tell you a story really quick. When I was a child, one of my mother's close friends, Jenny, was murdered by an intruder in her house. My mother hated that man that killed one of her best friends. I bet it would be hard for her if she were alive today to have an open mind about prisoner and felon rights. Whenever she thought of prisoners, how could she not take it personally and think about that monster that murdered her friend? That's human. It's human to want retribution or revenge against person or persons for a great wrong that has been done to you. I bet many listeners have had a similar experience, but there's a bigger picture here, and I'd like you to look at it with me, if possible. Why am I bringing this issue up now? Part of the reason why is because Bernie Sanders from Vermont, one of my favorite guys in the world, by the way. Bernie Sanders is an American hero. I'm not going to endorse him right now. I like to let people choose and make their own choices. I'm not going to tell you what's. I love Bernie Sanders. I think he's one of the best senators in history, up there with like Ted Kennedy. But he's extraordinarily brave, and this issue illustrates how brave he is. He's a front runner, one of the 3 front runners in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, and he brought attention to the topic of felons being able to vote during an April town hall meeting, broadcast by CNN. He said felons, even those convicted of terrorism offenses, should not have their voting rights taken away while they're in prison. Now that takes some balls, people. I mean, he basically said the Boston Marathon bomber should still be able to vote after, killing so many people and injuring so many other people. I mean, being crippled by a bomb, as far as I'm concerned, is a horrible, horrible thing. Every day you live your life beyond that, you can never forget that horrible incident. So saying that these guys that did that horrible stuff to American marathoners, saying they might be able to vote is not a very safe thing for a presidential candidate to say. But obviously Bernie Sanders is full of faith and courage. So he's that type of guy. Also, recently in California, we got some brave people in California as well. Recently, the legislature in California made a move towards allowing parolees to vote, which is a step in the right direction. You can't have everything at once, right? You got to take steps. As Barack Obama just said last week, politics is messy. It's messy. Good people have done bad things. Bad people have done good things, So California is now allowing parolees to vote. A bill was advanced, and as a result, it may be on the ballot this November in California. The fact is, felons being disenfranchised from voting has been a big issue in the last few years in general. Last fall, proponents of criminal justice reform got a major win when the state of Florida voted to approve a ballot measure to amend the state's constitution in order to re-enfranchise the more than 1 million citizens in the vote with felony convictions. In the state with felony convictions. So Florida has 1.4 million felons that haven't been able to vote for years, and that's being challenged now. And it was actually voted. It was voted to be reversed, but the new governor DeSantis of Florida, I have my friend down there, Renee, who tells me all about this. DeSantis is trying to find ways to not let it pass. They're actually working against more people voting. That's their job, because Republicans never win on popular votes. They always win on who they are able to restrict from voting. That's their game. So, ID, you need an ID, you need a poll test, whatever. Whatever they can put in front of you to stop you from voting to make it a little more difficult. They've cut down on early voting days in many, many states. New York, the state I'm from, of course, has increased voting days because, it's not a Republican state, obviously. But that's just how it is. But it still may be on the ballot in California. Florida's fighting it, but it was passed by the voters. The celebrations are short-lived, though. In April, Republicans in the state legislature voted to advance a bill that will require former offenders to pay all fines and legal fees in full before a sentence is deemed completed. So in Florida now they're saying, yeah, felons can vote, but you got to pay all those fees that we unjustly levied upon you first. All those fees we made up to unjustly, just because we knew we were in poverty and we knew you'd be paying fees for the rest of your life, and we knew we'd be able to throw you back in jail again for not paying them. Yeah, pay those off, the $10,000 or whatever that we made up. Pay that off first, then you can vote. Sounds kind of like a poll tax to me. I don't know. The move is likely to continue to disenfranchise individuals who have already served their time because they don't have the money. Now, you probably don't know this, but in most democracies in the world, they give convicted criminals the same voting rights as other citizens. That's true. I was talking to a guy from Germany on Facebook the other, like a couple months ago, and he was like, he went to jail and he was able to actually vote from jail. And he went for more than a year. So in America, that would mean a felony. A felony, the distinction of a felony between a felony and a misdemeanor is only how much time you're able to serve. If you did a crime that they can give you more than a year for, it's automatically a felony, no matter whether it was violent or not. So, I mean, this is the normal course of business to not disenfranchise people of their vote. It's really crazy. Significant exceptions do include the United States and some places in the United Kingdom where they disenfranchise you. But the majority of the 193 countries in the world let criminals vote. No problem. Especially when they come out of jail after they serve their time. Here in the U.S., 20 states do not allow persons convicted of a felony to vote while serving a sentence, but automatically restore the franchise to the person upon completion of the sentence, which seems a lot fairer. 13 states allow probationers and parolees to vote, but not inmates. 5 states allow probationers to vote, but not inmates or parolees. 8 states allow some, but not all, persons with felony convictions to vote after having completed their sentences. Some have qualifications attached to these rules. For example, Delaware does not restore the franchise until 5 years after the release from prison. Seems kind of arbitrary to me. Some governor was like, hey, let's give him 5 years before they can vote again. Hey, what you think about that, huh? Nothing scientific, right? Similarly, Kentucky requires that the person take action to gain restoration of the right to vote. So you got to fill out paperwork. You might have to pay some fines, whatever. Virginia, probably the worst, permanently disenfranchises persons with felony convictions. I think that was just turned around by the last governor who, I don't know if it went into law yet, but I think he tried to turn that around with an executive decision. I'm not sure if he was successful or not. But Governor Terry McAuliffe used his executive, this is the guy I'm talking about now, Terry McAuliffe was his name. He used his executive privilege to restore rights, executive privilege, I gotta say that 10 times fast, executive privilege to restore voting rights to about 140,000 people with criminal backgrounds in the state of Virginia. But I don't think that's lasted past his tenure. So it might be back to where it was before with Virginia never letting felons vote, no matter what, ever. Once you've been convicted of a felon, you might as well move out of the state if you ever want to vote again. As you can see, just about every state has a different view on what the word inalienable means when it comes to voting. Seems to me that the right to vote, if anything, should be standardized across the country. In the same way that prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment is standardized across the country. No state is allowed to torture you, regardless of your crime. It should be like the prohibition against racial discrimination in hiring people for a job, right? No state can allow it in its laws. The right to vote should be treated in the same way, standardized across the country. That's my view. The point is you can't cherry pick who deserves the vote. I don't believe in doing that. I don't believe that it is the government's job to cherry pick voters. And it's actually dangerous to allow government representatives to cherry pick voters when they have a vested interest in the outcome. Now, what are the arguments against allowing felons and incarcerated people to vote? Well, proponents have argued that persons who commit felonies have broken the social contract and have thereby given up their right to participate in a civilized society. Some argue that felons have shown poor judgment and that they should therefore not have a voice in the political decision-making process. Let me tell you what my big issues and why I have to be for this and why you should be as well. First of all, our country has a philosophical prohibition against taxation without representation. I say philosophical because it's not an actual rule. There are plenty of people who get taxed without representation. The whole area of DC, the whole Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, I mean, plenty of people get taxed without representation. It's not supposed to happen. Rich people don't let it happen to them, but it does. You know, it's sort of like torture in jail. It's not supposed to happen, but it does. Prisoners that are felons that are not allowed to vote are still being taxed, right? We have no problem taking their money. Hey, even if it's drug money, the government will take it. some people who are fans of history may remember that Al Capone actually went to jail for tax evasion. Not all the murders he did, not the St. Valentine's Day massacre. He actually went to jail for tax evasion because he didn't pay taxes on his illegal income. And they actually get a lot of drug dealers with that too. So these prisoners are still being taxed. We still take dirty money from them, but we don't want their dirty votes. How does that work? Since when do Americans believe in taxation without representation? Their money is good, but their vote is not. Also, voting is supposed to be inalienable. I do believe it's called an inalienable right. Inalienable, I always have trouble with that word. Inalienable means that you cannot alienate somebody of that right, right? So it's an oxymoron. How can a state disenfranchise something that is supposed to be inalienable? I'm getting better at that. And let's take a look at the results we have. Such disenfranchisement policy currently excludes 1 in 6 African-American males. Let me repeat that. The disenfranchisement of felons from voting currently excludes 1 in 6 African-American males in America cannot vote because they've once been arrested for felony. And we all know that the criminal justice system in America is all too fair, right? I mean, they don't arrest black people unwantingly, right? 1 in 6 African-American males in America cannot vote due to this policy. Why are we for it again? Remind me of why we're for it while I take a breath. In the 1998 elections, at least 10 states formally disenfranchised 20% of African-American voters due to felony convictions. 10 states formally disenfranchised 20% of African-Americans due to felony convictions. Research has shown that excluding felons provided a small but clear advantage to Republican candidates in every presidential and senatorial election from 1972 to 2000. Why are Democrats against allowing felons to vote? For what? How does that help us? Where does it make any logical sense? Where does it make any philosophical sense? Where does it make any compassionate sense? It doesn't. Felony disenfranchisement may have changed the course of history by costing Al Gore the 2000 presidential election. I'm sure us old folk remember that, right? The missing Chads, the falling Chads, the recount and count in the Supreme Court, unjustifiably stepping in and giving George W. Bush the election. We could have avoided all that just by not disenfranchising our own voters. Similarly, if not for felon disenfranchisement, senatorial candidates, Democratic ones, would likely have prevailed in a number of different historical elections. So what are we scared of? Are we afraid that the incarcerated will vote their way out of jail? Are we afraid that felons will vote to make all crimes legal? What do you think about this issue, people? I'm going to go ahead and take a break. My voice is cracking. I didn't get no sleep last night. Please forgive me. Let's play one more song, and I'm going to come back to you. I got some consumer tips. There's a couple of them for your wallet that I picked up from being an information addict. I want to share them with you right after this song, Taking My Money by Todd Bless. Hit it.
Her wrist smile, but I got style, girl, I want that. Friends for a while, but a man fat, get like this fat. Gotta keep it real, let's make a deal when we get back. I'ma get a test, I'ma kick it fast, let me sex that. Oh yeah, we can get a room, we can pop the whip, we can get low. Oh yeah, we can get honey, Jack and money, we can get strong. Oh yeah, let me get a cake, we can wake a bake, we can go hard. Oh yeah, gonna have a blast, tossing up cash, it's your job. I wanted to wipe it, but now she keep talking about money. I really do like it, but now I just feel like a dummy. She's twerking and shaking and breaking me, taking my money, taking my money. 33, 34, 35, 36, 38, baby, let's go. She calling, he calling, they
Radio check. After this, right? You got to do a radio check right after this, right?
Yeah.
All right, right after that, after the radio check, I'm gonna do consumer tips and then
Too fly, too fast, too bad. You got that whole lot, really that really wanna dance.
So I'm finally getting the rhythm to like how to organize things, you know, so that's succinct, you know.
It's a process.
Yeah. It took a while. It's taking a while for me to get my voice, but it's coming. I feel it coming. Yeah.
You're showing this as a go.
Yeah. I'm working, man. I intend to come here and roll up my sleeves. You know, it's not gonna be easy. I'm not expecting it to be a walk in the park.
It's gonna fall in place. There's a lot of businesses out there.
Yeah.
And they see the black face and they
Yeah, and I'm gonna work on that legal stuff. I'm working on legal stuff like starting tomorrow. I had to run to New York. I have all these things going on right now in New York. I got to do an election. They have an election on Tuesday. They want to hire me for one day to be a lawyer, so I got to go back on Monday night, and I'll be back on Wednesday morning. So I'm just running around right now, but things are settled down. I'm trying to get my income straight. Yeah. You're gonna do your break, and right after that, I'm coming right in.
You're listening to WKND 1480 AM Windsor, Hartford, W248CR 97.5 FM.
Is that my turn? It is my turn. We had to do the call-in at 11 o'clock, and I'm running a little late, but I do want to give you some consumer tips, so listen closely. This is really important. Every little dime you save matters. Everything you do to protect yourself, your identity, your money, your wallet, your bank account, your passwords matters. First of all, I've been hearing a lot about DuckDuckGo. I'm a Google man. I love Alphabet. I love Google. I love Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the guys that founded Google. I follow the whole story. I'm a very entrepreneurial spirit. But there's another search engine out there. And let me tell you about Google first. Google basically they have everything. They have your whole life online, right, in the cloud. They know where you search. They know where you go because of Google Maps. They know everything about you. That's fine with me. Except, when the government wants to know. And in case they want to like build a case against you or something, they're well known for giving up all your information on a subpoena. There is another search engine that I've been hearing a lot about from the conservatives. And, the conservatives are on to something sometimes with the conspiracy theories. It's called DuckDuckGo. You go on this search engine, and it works just like Google, but it does not track your searches. So, not that I would ever advise you to do this, but if you have to kill your wife and you want to search for like how to do it, they can't find out if you use DuckDuckGo. But don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. You should love your wife. But, you want to find out how to, get around some taxes. If you ever watch like the First 48 or any of these crime shows, when they go through these people's like Google searches, they get the whole story, man. I'm just like, your wife can have your Google search like hacked and find out what you've been doing in your spare time, like that you've been lying about. Just use DuckDuckGo if you're really concerned about somebody looking at what you're looking at, and that'll work. So I'm just prescribing that for you because you never know. You never know when someone's actually looking through your stuff. And I need to add in a couple of credit report tips that I found out recently. First of all, I brought Self-Lender and Pedal Card to you a couple months ago. The Pedal Card is a new credit card. It evaluates you differently than most credit cards do to give you credit. And they'll give you up to $10,000, $15,000 in credit based on other things than what traditional credit cards look at. So I actually got a Pedal Card to test it out, and it's been working beautifully. It really has. It's a great card. It's put out by Visa. Also, there's another credit repair technique that I've been using called Self-Lender. It's a situation where you're paying a company to set up a CD, and they record the payments like it's a loan. At the end of 12 months, they give you all your payments back in one big lump sum. $1,000, $5,000, whatever you set it up for. It's actually been working pretty well. I wanted to give it a try before I advised it to you. It's a great, great thing. Go to self.com, SELF. I don't get paid for this. I'm just telling you because it's good. It is a good service. And Pedal Card, PETAL. It's a new card. You might want to check that out. If you're trying to build your credit, those are two options that you definitely want to check out. Also, another tip, I just told a client this last week. Annualcreditreport.com is a wonderful resource for getting your credit reports. But each credit reporting agency actually has its own website. And if you sign up to their website, they've got tons of perks up there for you. Experian has this new thing called Experian Boost, where it adds in your utility bills and all types of bills that traditional credit reporting agencies don't pay attention to. And it actually can boost your credit score like 70 points. So go to Experian.com, go to TransUnion.com, go to Equifax.com and check those out on their site. They have all types of tools there, and it's completely free. I would check that out if you're trying to boost your credit score up. You need credit these days for everything, right? It's not like when I was younger where we could just ignore credit. I remember I got my first credit card. I actually ignored the bills. I was like, well, they lost on that one. You can't do that anymore. It follows you everywhere. Also, really quickly, when you get to those websites, check out credit freezes. Don't use LifeLock. I hope I don't get sued for saying that, but whatever. That's my opinion. Don't use LifeLock. Don't use any subscription service for your credit. Subscription services, what they do is when someone hacks you, they give you a call and say, hey, someone just hacked you. You don't need that. You need someone to stop them from getting into your credit score or into your credit account. And the only way to do that is to freeze your credit. That's totally free. It was mandated by the federal government that the credit reporting agencies offer it to you free. And it's way better than any kind of other service where they monitor it. Credit monitoring is a sham. It's a fraud. It's something that you don't need to waste your time on. It's a way to get a subscription fee from you every month. You freeze your credit once. You don't pay a monthly fee. You unfreeze it to apply for new credit. No one can take a card in your name, even if they have your social security number, if you freeze your credit. That is the answer. And they would rather charge you for something so they don't promote it. But check out credit freezes, a real credit freeze. Look it up. I'm not lying to you. I'd like to share with you a couple of great phone apps that I'm using for getting your money straight. Some of these are very, very popular, so you've heard of them before. Acorns is a great app to save money. When you use your debit card or credit card, it saves the change before the next dollar, and it actually puts it into a stock account, an equity account for you automatically that you choose for yourself. It's pretty handy. I know a lot of people that are using that. Also, Robinhood, a great way to buy stocks for free. You can buy stocks for free using Robinhood. My nephew uses it all the time. He's got several $1,000s of stocks using Robinhood, and they don't take a dime from you. Also, I have this other app that not many people know about called ACR. It's a great way to record phone calls on your cell phone. Obviously, I'm an attorney. Sometimes when I talk to people, I want to be able to go over what exactly they said, what exactly was agreed to, and you can record phone calls. It's very, very clear. It's very, very good. ACR, 3 letters. And look up ACR recording if you're having trouble finding it. It's really a great app. I actually used it to improve my credit score. I called a collection agency, and I recorded them saying, we'll erase it off your credit, stuff. They thought they were lying to me, but I used it and sent it to the credit reporting agency and said, see, they promised it. And so they actually took a bad mark of my credit report that way. So it's handy in several different ways. If you're speaking to an adversary, ex-wife, ex-husband, you're negotiating something, you want to see how crazy people are calling you, you can do all that stuff with ACR. It's pretty handy. I also like recording collection agencies when they call me to harass me, because you can actually get paid for that. They're not supposed to do that. Every time they call you to harass you, you can get paid like $1,000. But go see an attorney about that if you don't believe me. I am one, by the way. I won't go into that. But collection agencies record you. Why not record them? That's my philosophy. I like the Google podcasting app. It's very, very small. Just so happens you can get the Jamal Show podcast on it. Just going to put that out there once. The Google podcasting app is great. It's very, very tiny. It doesn't take up much space, and it's very handy. I also use iHeartRadio, so thank you, iHeart. Now, with that, I will be signing off on the Jamal Show until next week. I think next week we're going to talk a little bit about investing. the ins, the outs. I will handle this in true Jamal fashion here on the show. I hope you'll join me. If you aren't here next week, then there's really no need for me to be here. So just make sure you're here next week, and I'll be here too. Make sure you follow this podcast from this Harlem cat. We could use your support, and you can certainly use ours, even if you don't know that yet. Have a great week, and hey, thank you all for listening to Jamal C. Riot. Be good.
This is the Jamal Show.
I made it.
My man, go out.
Let me just use the bathroom.
This is the Jamal Show. 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 This is the Jamal Show.
So I'm gonna go and sleep, and I'll be calling you tomorrow after church, man, to catch up on everything. All right?
Okay.
I'm just out of it. Man, I got home from Time Lesson Friday at like 2:15. I got to my sister. I was like, hold on.